It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Tennessee Volunteers Associate Director of Sports Nutrition, Amanda Fernandez. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into college athletics?
So whenever I was in high school, I was very involved in athletics. And a lot of the times whenever I was training, I would get injured. And so that's kind of how I started out. I first was in athletic training, and I wanted to be able to help athletes recover and get back on the playing field as soon as possible, because I knew what it felt like to train and then not be able to compete whenever your season came about. So
How was it like going to Alabama to study sports nutrition?
So I actually did not attend in person. It was online. And for me, it was very convenient because I was working at the same time. So I was able to take my classes outside of my work schedule.
What was that like, obviously, going into certified athletic training before you got into sports nutrition?
So from Duquesne, I graduated and then attended the University of Miami. And from there, I was a graduate assistant athletic trainer. And so it was a really wonderful experience. I got to work with high caliber athletes. It was very long hours. So that's one thing about college athletics, is the hours are very long. So you have to really love what you do. Otherwise, it's just not going to work out. So
What was your time like, obviously, working with the Miami Hurricanes as an athletic trainer?
I loved it there. I mean, I made so many different connections. The people I worked with there were great. Still have connections with them. And I got to travel and experience things that I never got to experience. And on top of that, just learning so much. There were so many people there that were so knowledgeable. And so being able to work with them and learn from them as a graduate assistant. And then they brought me back as a full year-long intern, where I got to do a little bit of both nutrition and athletic training, because I was getting my state license hours at the same time. And that was an awesome experience. So
What were the sports that you covered while at Miami Hurricanes?
primarily it was track and field and cross country for my first 2 years. My third year was football. And then whenever they kind of needed it, I helped out with volleyball a little bit, and then baseball a little.
What was that like, obviously, helping out with the baseball team and the football team?
So baseball was really just a little bit covering until they were switching over between staff members. So I just kind of helped with that. But I mean, the team was great. The coaches were great. And then football was it was like a whole production. I was blessed to work there. Again, it was long hours, but very rewarding. Very exciting, especially being on the sidelines during game days, being able to get that experience, work with high caliber athletes that go professional. I remember my first year there, we had 13 guys go to the NFL after my first season there. And to me, that was insane.
What was that feeling like of obviously seeing those high caliber athletes that you trained go on to the professional level, whether it was the NFL or other professional levels?
Just proud of them. I mean, some of them come from having nothing, and then they work hard, they achieve their dreams, they end up, not only being an athlete, but also a student and getting a degree. And then from there, just going on and being able to play, maybe if it's not only for a little bit, and then they can pursue other things with their career, but it's awesome to see their growth.
What was the transition like from you from being an athletic trainer to now a sports nutrition?
So that happened because whenever I was an athletic trainer, nutrition wasn't really touched on, and it wasn't really a thing at Miami at the time. So we had some athletes, and this still happens today, unfortunately. I still see this today, that they'll wake up, go straight to practice and not eat anything. And then after, maybe just grab like a small snack and run to class. And then they'll come back for their afternoon practice or training session and not have anything fueled, and then train and practice. And then their first real meal is like dinner at 5 or 6 p.m. And then maybe later in the night, they have snacks and stuff. And so over time, months and months and months of training, your body breaks down and wears down. And as an athletic trainer, I was getting all the injuries and trying to treat them. But that wasn't the main problem. It was like we were trying to fix and put band-aids on stuff instead of address the actual issue of people not feeling properly, not recovering because they're not eating. So that kind of sparked the interest. And then I had some classes while I was at UM that really also sparked the interest to try like make that switch and do a holistic approach with both athletic training, therapy, and then also with nutrition, and make it a whole kind of like I said, approach, so that the athlete could, one, not only recover, but also perform better too.
What was that like from going from obviously that from Miami to going to FIU to work in the sports nutrition area?
So I was the first sports nutritionist at FIU, which was awesome because I got to make the program however I wanted to do. And it was very different because FIU had a very small budget. It wasn't a Power 5 school. It was still Division I, but very small. So I became very appreciative of things and the resources I had at Miami that I didn't have at FIU anymore. And I had to get creative with how to make and run a program with not so big of a budget. So it made me really think outside the box. On top of that, I was the only dietitian there at FIU. So I was working with football along with all Olympic sports. So my time was spread very thin, and my resources were spread very thin trying to cover everything. So again, I had to get creative. I had to recruit a lot of students and volunteers to help me be able to manage all the different areas, fueling stations, sports, whenever obviously you can only be at one place at one time. But that's how I was able to kind of do it there and learn and grow as a professional in the field of athletics whenever you go from one extreme to another.
What was that like, obviously being in charge and being the director during your time at FIU?
It was a really good learning experience and growth experience. Like I said, I had to think outside the box and think about how to do things, but then also like I was in charge of a lot of dietetic students and interns and volunteers. So I learned how to be a mentor and how to run a program and how to do the budgets and how to do the ordering and all that stuff that as a like starting out as you're a dietitian, you really don't get that at larger schools whenever you're just an assistant. So being the only one there and the first director, it was a good experience to have.
How does your time as a director help you into where you are now as at Tennessee Volunteers as an assistant director for sports nutrition?
It has definitely helped because at Tennessee, I still kind of on the Olympic side, keep track of the budget, keep track of inventory, ordering. I was just working on all the budget today, trying to split it up between all the different sports. So having that background of working with all the sports at FIU and then coming to Tennessee and then working all the Olympic sports, overseeing the budget for it and how it works, I was able to use that experience and help to keep track and dividing up everything. On top of that, not only the obvious stuff as far as the day-to-day, like fueling station, recovering education, counseling, one-on-one sessions with the athletes. I got experience from FIU to be able to do that. And I also think that the athletic training portion has helped me too, because we are technically underneath the branch of athletic medicine at Tennessee. So we work hand in hand with the athletic trainers. And so having that sports medicine background has also, I think, helped me be successful and also helped me obtain the position as well.
What was it like for you to get back to the Power 5 school level to work in sports nutrition?
A blessing. So like I said, I appreciated everything at FIU as far as the resources I had whenever I was at Miami. Now coming to Tennessee and being in the SEC, the budget is even bigger than what it was at Miami. And so it's very nice to have and not have to be spread so thin and trying to make the dollar go so far. So very blessed.
What does a day in the life look like on the SEC level working in sports nutrition?
So it depends on the day-to-day and I guess the season. So I work directly with both basketball teams, men and women's, and with both tennis teams, men and women. So our schedules are typically surrounded by whatever's going on with the sport. So for example, this morning I had body composition testing with our men's tennis team that started at 5:30 this morning. So bright and early, and then typically men's basketball and women's basketball, depending on the day too, tends to go in the afternoons. So those are like later at nights. Also during season of basketball season, during the games, those are always going to be in the evenings. So there's times where I had to go from a men's basketball game the day before, maybe leave at 10 or 11 p.m. and then have to be in for men's tennis lifts at 6 a.m. So long days, but the day-to-day variations just kind of depend with what's going on. A lot of it is usually basketballs in the afternoon and then tennis in the morning, and then kind of all the other stuff as far as counseling, menu planning, ordering meals. If I have any like educations or need to keep track of the budget or anything, that stuff is kind of done during the downtime in between.
What is it like, obviously, seeing, let's say, the men basketball athletes, obviously, when they come into you and then they have a game that night, seeing them perform at the top level because you helped them?
It's very rewarding. This season, seeing them win the SEC tournament, it was just an amazing experience to be a part of, and being a part of, obviously winning is an awesome feeling versus the opposite. So seeing everybody in such good spirits and after a game is, I mean, it's awesome.
Of course, for my listeners who want to get into the sports nutrition, what are some of the things that they need to do?
So it actually just changed. Now you need to get a master's degree in order to be eligible to sit for the RD exam. So you have to do your coursework. There's two different ways to go about it. It's usually called a DPD program, which is basically just the in-class coursework. And then you would do a dietetic internship where you would have to apply. It's kind of a long and stressful process, very competitive. So having a high GPA and having like a lot of different extracurricular activities and service hours can help with that too. But very competitive. And so you kind of match up with whichever dietetic internship program you have, almost kind of like a medical doctor residency. And you have to rank the programs you want to go through. And then you get matched. You do your internship hours, which usually consist of community hours, clinical hours, and then food service. And then sometimes the internship will have a specialty. Sometimes it will be sports nutrition. Other times it will be more clinical, so you would have to do a little bit more clinical hours in the hospital. It just kind of depends on what program you go for. After that, you would have to take your board exam, and then that's when you get passed. You pass and you become a dietitian. And then after that, depending on whichever state you're in, you might have to apply for state licensure, which is basically just submit a whole bunch of paperwork, and then you get your state license. The other way about going about it is there's a coordinated program, which basically just combines the coursework and the dietetic internship. So you do it all at once. And it's, I guess, a speedier process. And then you do the RD exam and then again, apply for state licensure if needed.
What is the process going about obviously picking which teams you want to obviously represent, whether it's you want to do football for the whole year or do vice versa, going football, softball, volleyball?
So that kind of depends. Usually for football, it's the position you apply for. So whenever you are looking for positions, it will usually say like sports dietitian football or director of football nutrition, something like that within the title. And then usually if it's Olympic sports, it will say usually it may or may not have the sports listed whenever you're looking at the job details. Whenever I had applied, I knew that I was going to be working basketball, but I didn't know what other sports I was going to be working. So it just kind of depends. It's we try to break it up depending on what the seasons are, so that we each have a sport that's in season. So that's how our staff kind of broke up.
What is the balance like, obviously, between obviously being a sports nutritionist and working those long hours and obviously having family time?
So you can't tell right now, but I'm actually going to be having a baby within the next few weeks. So I guess I'll have a little bit more insight on that in the next months or year. But just having a support system and having support from family members. I know in the past it has been hard because typically we work on holidays. So I've had to have some conversations like, I'm sorry, I can't, come home for the holidays. I can't travel because I'm at work. But I think in the long run, whenever people see the success, it makes it worth it and makes them put it into perspective. And so they just have to remind them whenever those times are missed, that this is what it's for. So,
of course, what are some things that you learned as your time as an athletic trainer?
Learned a lot. Learned a lot about different therapeutic modalities. Learned a lot about manual therapy and how different parts of the body are all connected. For example, would have some athletes with hamstring injuries and trying to figure out what the cause of that was, if it was tight hips or weak glutes, weak hamstrings, even like the lats and the upper back can have an effect, and everything's connected. So trying to kind of figure out the puzzle pieces of why a specific injury happens for one person might be different for somebody else, and trying to make it individualized and personalized to make sure that the athlete is getting the best care that they receive so that they can get better.
Of course, what are some of the things that you've learned so far as a sports nutritionist?
Again, a lot of different things. Right now, there's so many different things, and so many different people will come to me about, oh, I've heard like this supplement is great. Can I take it? Can we start doing this with the team? And you have to really go back to the research to see if it's valid and if it's safe. Obviously, our athletes are subjected to NCAA drug testing, so we don't want them to take anything that would flag a positive drug test because supplements are not regulated by the FDA. So really, they can put anything they want into a supplement, and it might have a banned substance in it. So really being careful with that. Other things, just overall growth as a professional, communicating with a bunch of different departments so that it's all kind of cohesive and beneficial for the team and beneficial for the athletes too.
What has it been like, obviously, working in sports nutritionist and obviously making sure, what is it like, obviously, learning about sports nutritionists while also maintaining your nutrition while working in the field?
You mean like working with other sports dietitians in the field?
Mm-hmm.
So going from FIU, where I was a team of one, to now having a staff, it's been such a blessing because there will be times where I have an idea and then I'll talk about it with one of my coworkers and they'll be like, that's a great idea, but let's do it this way, because then they make the idea even better. So same thing, like if we get stuck on something and we need to talk it over, it's great because it's more than one brain that has that background and that knowledge of sports nutrition, sports dietetics, exercise physiology, and we can all kind of like talk it out and make sure that we're getting the right answer and like the best answer for whatever the question is. So it's been wonderful. So I would very much rather prefer this versus having the opposite of being a team of one.
Of course, what advice would you give people looking to work in the college athletics?
Keep trying. So whenever I first started out, I actually did not get into the University of Miami originally because my GRE scores were not high enough. So I worked at a high school for a year and then retook the GRE, started a semester later in the like winter semester, the spring semester. So I didn't get in the first time, but everything ended up working out because I started in the strength and conditioning program to begin with at Miami, learned about exercise physiology and got that background. Then the next year, the nutrition program opened there for the master's degree. And so I switched over. And that wouldn't have happened if I had started a semester earlier. So everything worked out the way it needed to. But if I had given up and gone to somewhere else, I would have never ended up doing nutrition. I probably would have still be, I don't know what I could be doing right now, but everything happens for a reason, and to keep trying and not give up, even if you end up failing first. It's just keep trying, perseverance, and everything will work out.
Of course, what advice would you give people looking to go in either into athletic training or decide to go into sports nutrition?
Stay on top of research, trying to make yourself as marketable as possible. So like for me, for example, I have multiple degrees and certifications. So having that background in a couple different areas, one makes it not only better for an athlete in your approach, but also whenever you're working within an athletic department and having to work with and communicate with other athletic profession or healthcare professionals and athletic department professionals as well. And then also just in collegiate athletics, just be prepared for long hours, because like I said, it really depends on what the sports schedule is. So you really have to love what you do, because it's a lot of work to be put forth. So I feel like some people might not know that at the beginning. Whenever like you're starting out, you might not realize how long the hours actually are. But if you love what you do, it's worth it.
What advice would you give future sports nutritionists looking to get started in the industry?
Starting out, reach out and try to volunteer with different programs. And I would say the more programs you can be involved with, you get to kind of see how things are done at different places. That way, wherever you do end up, you have different, I guess, backgrounds and ideas and environments, so that you could bring more to the table with wherever you end up. That's my advice.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Tennessee Volunteers Sports Nutritionist Program?
So my Instagram is afern3. And then our sports nutrition Instagram is bowls_nutrition.
Thank you again, Amanda Fanera, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Tennessee Volunteers as the Associate Director of Sports Nutrition.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Amanda, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.